want to get into how even though the end product of the 12 links of dependent origination, the 12 linked, which is called the actualized result, the actualized factors of all the chains of dependent origination, is basically birth, aging, suffering, death, and all that wonderful stuff. So it's looking at life as it is, and then sort of looking backwards into the link as to where did this come from. So when we understand where this came from, then we can do something to undo the experience of suffering. So the presentation of the 12 links of dependent origination is not simply bad news. Okay, look at this mess, because it is called the wheel of life. Sometimes the 12 links are called the wheel. So they make a circle and it looks like the wheel of life. Okay, this is life. Life is suffering. That's it. There's nothing else to do. Just bear with suffering. Okay, but rather it is presented in such a way. It is presented so that we come to know it, and so that we can learn how to come out of it. And knowing the process of creation, instead of creating suffering, we'll create liberation, nirvana, peace, bliss instead. Okay. All right, so we'll do our meditation, the meditation that we did last time, meditation of letting go. And without further ado, let's begin. So bring and I want to say thank you for being flexible, especially very short notice about the date has been changed, and thank you for showing up. Thank you. Okay. All right. Bring into conscious awareness that you're going to meditate. Feel the body responding in a way that is favorable to meditation. You start to feel the body beginning to relax, the breath beginning to relax. And because of awareness being directed towards these parts of our being beginning to relax, it helps the mind to also begin to relax. And once you begin to notice the signs arising in a palpable way in the body, a sense of calming, a sense of pleasantness, doesn't have to be overwhelming pleasant, doesn't have to be overwhelming calm, just any measure of it, direct awareness towards it, rejoice. The rejoice is like fuel, and it will help enhance what awareness is directed towards. And hold in your mind a sense of curiosity, a deep sense of curiosity. Feeling that the body's ready because you made all the necessary adjustments. Beginning to make actual contact with the signs that you're beginning to meditate, rejoice, the calm in the body, the pleasantness, the calm beginning to appear in the breath and the pleasantness in the breath, and some measure of calm, some measure of pleasantness in the mind, rejoice. Staying in that space, scan the body, noticing the legs, noticing the signs present in the legs, rejoice. Noticing the signs in the torso, rejoice. The upright and relaxed and comfortable spine, to relax, arms from the shoulders to the tip of the fingers. Notice the signs in the head and neck. Rejoice. Notice the signs in the mouth, teeth, tongue resting in their natural places. Rejoice. Notice the signs in the relaxed muscles of the face and forehead. Rejoice. And place the eyes in such a way that you continue to experience this momentum of going deeper into relaxation, deeper into calm, deeper into pleasantness. Whether they are closed, opened, halfway open, whatever helps you, you adopt that posture for the eyes, noticing the signs present in the eyes. Rejoice. Now gently bring attention to the breath without rejecting what the body's perceiving, feeling, without rejecting what your senses are picking up. Just go and include the breath in that field of awareness. And make contact with the sense of calming taking place in the breath, to whatever measure, and rejoice. Along with that calmness, there's probably some pleasantness. Notice it, rejoice. Staying with the breath in this way, make the commitment to fully enter the meditative state. And it's not modifying the mind in any way, but rather allowing the mind to simply be its natural state. And however the mind is presenting itself, understand that that's natural state. That's natural state. So take a nice deep breath in through the nose and through the mouth. As you release, release also throughout your being. And as you release, let go, notice yourself going deeper into the calm, deeper into the pleasantness in the body, in the breath, in the mind. Stay with that momentum, stay with that momentum. And at the end of the breath, staying with that momentum, let the breath return on its own. Stay with that momentum. Be aware of the enhanced calm in the body, the breath, and the mind. Be aware of the enhanced pleasantness in the body, the breath, and the mind. And rejoice, rejoice. And keep attitude, allowing the mind to simply be. And however the mind is presenting itself, it is the nature of the mind that is being perceived in some form or another. It's a manifestation of the mind's nature that we are indeed encountering and perceiving. Like seeing your child playing a game that adults are supposed to do. You don't criticize the child for not being skilled at it, but rather you enjoy seeing the child playing. So enjoy witnessing the mind presenting whatever it is presenting to you. And knowing that it is able to do that because of its nature. And that's a lot. And feeling that self abiding in that momentum, rejoice. And get ready to sort of stabilize and even deepen this experience with threefold breath. We made the commitment, we have now entered, now we are stabilizing with threefold breath. Through the nose, gently, fully breathe in, staying connected to the signs. Staying connected to the signs, and then let yourself drop deeper into the signs as you breathe out. When you notice any enhancement in any of the signs, whether it's in the body, whether it's in the breath, whether it's energetic, whether it's in the mind, whether it's in awareness itself, rejoice. Stay in that depth as you take the next breath, full breath. Gently through the nose, breathe in. And through the mouth again, let yourself go deeper into the signs. Notice the inner signs arising, perhaps inner sounds, inner visions. Welcome them, knowing that these are signs that you are actually going deeper into the meditation. You are now accessing already more subtle, more powerful aspects of your own consciousness. And indeed, the very appearances are different because there's a different consciousness engaging them. And again, for the third time, through the nose, gently, fully breathe in. And through the mouth, breathe out. Let the breath return on its own. Feel the depth that you have reached. Rejoice. The depth as you feel it in the body, the depth as you feel it energetically, the depth as you feel it in the calm and the pleasantness of the breath. The measure that you are experiencing it in the mind. Remember the inner signs, the inner sensations, whatever they may be, they are an indirect contact with the natural luminosity and the natural clarity of the mind. So rejoice. So whatever is appearing, whatever we are experiencing right now is in effect a kind of manifestation, a kind of rearranging of peace, joy, clarity, radiance, and directed awareness, directed attention. So whatever you're experiencing, whether your eyes are showing you things, whether your inner mind is showing you things, whether you're hearing the things around you, or whether it's sounds coming from within, have the understanding this is a manifestation of these, of peace. This is peace. This is joy. This is clarity, the space that allows for things to appear. This is radiance, the vividness of experiences. This is the mind, the attention being collected and directed. And this is where you do the rest of the meditation as a back. You allow yourself to be aware of whatever is present, whether it's inward or outward, and consider it like you're watching a movie screen. And there's a part of you that is sort of like immersed in the movie, and you can't quite tell that it's a movie. And you step back a little bit, and you begin to be aware of the borders of the screen. You begin to be aware of the space that the movie is showing in. So it's somewhat similar to that. Whatever is appearing, whatever the appearance is, whatever the experience, accept it to be, this is reality. This is, in a sense, emptiness manifesting as what I'm experiencing. And you're interested in a different perception of the emptiness, a different experience of the clarity, a different experience of the luminosity, the radiance, where there is more of a understanding that this is radiance, this is clarity, this is joy, this is focus, this is peace. And after every breath, have the conviction of knowing you're now witnessing the same thing, but rather at a deeper level, at a clearer level, with a clearer consciousness, a brighter consciousness, a more blissful consciousness, a more peaceful consciousness. And before we fully dive into that, understand the mind's potential to have that experience and trust it, have respect for it in whatever ways that it is able to teach you, to direct you, to protect you. Have deep respect, deep trust, and deep gratitude. And have a sense of that protection is in your sight, in your heart. Either visualize it as a presence, bright presence entered your heart, or just have that conviction and then begin knowing you are indeed right now perceiving reality. And you step back and you want to see a deeper layer of it that is closer to the bliss, closer to the peace, closer to the radiance, closer to the clarity. And keep relaxing. Relax, step back. So wherever you've reached, have in your mind a certain measure of conviction that right here, right now, you are perceiving a more subtle level of reality. You're hearing a more subtle level of reality. You're seeing, you're feeling, you have even ideas or at a level, more subtle level of reality. And at the bottom, at the root of all these is peace, bliss, clarity, radiance, and focus. And these very things that are appearing as colors, shapes, sound, ideas, taste, movement, stability, they're all in essence, in reality, manifestations of clarity, radiance, bliss, peace. Get ready to arise from the meditation. We dedicate the meditation to help you with this session. And now go back to just this feeling, just the space of the meditation itself, the signs. Rejoice witnessing the depth that you're in them, that you're experiencing them. And being ready, take a nice deep breath, feel and hear that breath in through the nose, out. And now deliberately, consciously reconnect with your immediate surroundings through a sense of touch. Be aware of your point of contact between you and your seat. Be aware of the sounds in your immediate surroundings. Be aware of colors, knowing that these are such color. Be aware of shapes, lights, shadows. Okay. Now, the 12 links of dependent origination, even in saying that name, which is really like a mouthful, once you begin to study it, there's, in the very beginning, when you're beginning to study it, it seems to promise something that seems to be immediate, something that you want in your life immediately. It seems to promise something. It seems to have that immediate promise in the beginning. So you dive into it and then you see, oh yeah, okay, that's the one, that's the second link, that's the third link. And eventually you're able to say all 12 links. And when you try to see how is it that they can actually help you in this immediate way, then your mind, then it goes into what seems to be, it becomes more like what seems to be like more like an intellectual exercise. And because it goes into this, what seems to be this intellectual exercise, and it loses its more immediate sense of its ability to deal with what is happening with your life in right here, right now. And for most people, it just goes on a shelf and you don't really remember it anymore, or perhaps the name of it is the 12 links of dependent origination. And you know it begins with ignorance, and somewhere there's some other links in between, and we end up with birth and suffering and death. And we don't remember what's number 2, we don't remember what's number 3, but we might be able to remember maybe consciousness is there somewhere. I don't know where it is. Okay. It's because it became intellectual. It seemed to have lost what it was promising us. But to the kind of practitioners who actually make use of the 12 links of dependent origination are people who have imprints from lives, from many lifetimes of having studied at the feet of great masters, of having practiced over many lifetimes. And just like the very first 5 disciples of the Buddha, when the Buddha said merely just the Four Noble Truths, it was something that they never heard of before. It was the most powerful thing they ever heard, and it helped them to finally achieve liberation. Okay, so if you are one of those people who've been practicing for many lifetimes, you have collected these imprints, the 12 links of the independent origination become, oh my goodness. And you go, and usually these are called solitary realizers. And what they achieve is what is referred to as the translation of the term, the Sanskrit or the Pali term, pratyekabuddha, means self-made Buddha. Of course, we all know there's no such thing as self-made Buddha. But what it means is that these people having such great imprint from previous lifetimes because they have served their teachers properly, they've studied and they practice properly. Now they have great potential. They don't need that much help to help them get to liberation. They need just a little hint. And with that little hint, they can go off into a solitary retreat and achieve the liberation. That's why they're called solitary realizers. Not that they have no need as soon as they're born and say, oh, where am I? Oh, okay, let me go to a cave. I know what to do. Leave me alone. and they achieve enlightenment by themselves. It's not quite that way. But they have someone who gives them that hint, and that's all that they needed. And everything that they've collected before, all that imprints begins to flower, and they're able to guide themselves that way. Okay. And it is said that what people mainly use is they meditate on the 12 links of dependent origination. And the way they meditate on the 12 links of dependent origination is you begin with where you are. What kind of existence am I experiencing right now? I'm experiencing an existence that is enmeshed with suffering. And you sort of trace where does this come from? Where does this come from? Where does this come from? And you end up with ignorance. And when you arrive at ignorance, then that's the good news. Or now you know what is at the root of this experience, this suffering experience. Now all you need to do is to understand ignorance, and to when you understand it, then you're able to cut it. And when you cut the root of suffering, which is ignorance, then all the chain of events that comes out of ignorance will stop, and eventually a suffering life a suffering kind of existence will come to a stop, will come to a cessation. Okay, so you meditate on the 12 links. Where's this? And the way that you meditate it is the way that the Buddha presents it in many of the sutras, beginning with, where does this come from? And when you ask yourself, where does this come from? Then you are sincere with the question. You leave your mind open to really look at it, to where is this coming from? And then you begin to see what's like, for example, where does death come from? What is it? What is the necessary condition for death to be a possibility, for death to exist? And the obvious answer will be being born. And then once you're able to make that link, the only reason that death is possible is because birth exists. Okay. And when you're able to make that link that is connected to birth, then you go into, okay, what are the necessary conditions for there to be birth? And then you go back and you go back and then you go back and you see eventually you arrive at ignorance. And when you gain confidence in that, it's only when you gain confidence in that, in what is, and this is the reverse order of the wheel. This is what we refer to as the reverse order, starting from suffering, death, and then going back to ignorance. And then from ignorance, you see, and it's not only enough, it's not enough just to see, starting with your condition right now, going back, and you see ignorance. At first, you will not be convinced. It will be somewhat abstract. Yes, you see, yes, very strongly you believe the only, the necessary condition for there to be death is birth. You gain conviction in that, but the other links connected to it, they're somewhat abstract. You begin to believe in them, but they're not strong convictions. And in order for us to have the strong conviction, is that now we must go forward from ignorance. We must have the same way we have the conviction that, yes, I can see how death is connected to birth. Then we must have that same level of conviction how ignorance is connected to creating the potential for all this eventually arriving at birth and then death. Okay. And once you go forward and backwards, then our conviction becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And when our conviction becomes strong, that we see how ignorance is the root of all this. Whenever we are experiencing any discomfort, whenever we are experiencing any kind of suffering, the instinct we want to practice where we arrive at a point, ignorance, rather than so-and-so. So-and-so may be somehow connected, maybe somehow part of the condition, but we must arrive at a conviction that ignorance is the root, is at the root of this, okay? And it's not just personal thinking, everywhere in the world that you get speaking, okay? And when we are able to connect our suffering, whatever the suffering that is going on, to ignorance, and when just like when we have the conviction of only because of birth there is death, in the same way we have a conviction because of ignorance there is suffering, without necessarily knowing the intricacies of the things, of the steps in between, but we arrive at that conviction. Then we develop a sense of aversion for ignorance, and ignorance in all the different forms that we can think of ignorance. We could say ultimate ignorance in the sense of not knowing the ultimate nature of reality, and even everyday kind of ignorance. Basically, we gain an appreciation, we gain a fascination, we gain, we even say you begin to develop a love affair for truth. We begin to love affair for wisdom. And we have a sense of aversion towards ignorance. This sense of aversion towards ignorance is that is true renunciation. That is the mind that is necessary, that determination, that conviction that is necessary for us to even see the possibility of liberation. And this renunciation is a revulsion towards everything that ignorance stands for. Okay? And then once we develop this revulsion towards ignorance, then we begin to have a love affair towards the opposite of ignorance. We become very attracted to whatever is the opposite of ignorance. And what this teaches us, especially with the connection between ignorance and potential, is that there's reality, right? There's reality. And there is an understanding of reality. And what this is telling us, whatever our understanding of reality is, it will create a potential for experience. It will create a potential for a kind of life, for an experience of a kind of life, whatever the understanding is. It doesn't have to be correct understanding for it to produce an effect, for it to produce a kind of life. Any kind of understanding of reality will produce an effect. And of course, ignorance is a wrong understanding of reality. And this wrong understanding of reality creates a reality where at the end of it, the ultimate effect of it is suffering. And it's not just suffering. If it was just suffering where we ourselves in our own being experience suffering, everyone else is in bliss, that would be okay to some extent. But rather, we create suffering where we draw people into that suffering. When we are immersed in the suffering, we draw others into it. Okay, that's really the real tragedy of suffering. If it was just a personal thing, completely personal thing, then there might be some good news there. Okay, but the tragedy of it is the reason that those around us have the danger of being pulled into suffering is because of we sort of like create this sort of black hole of suffering where we are drawing each other into further suffering. Okay, so that's the thing of it. Because of my suffering, I will act in such a way to induce you to create suffering for me and to reduce you to create suffering for yourself. So we help each other to perpetuate the wheel to perpetuate suffering. And right now, and it's not only this is not only just at the philosophical level. Oh, something that to be concerned about. It's only relevant as a thesis that you can write in a book, that suffering is directly connected to ignorance, a misunderstanding of reality, but rather to understand it, how even whatever the suffering that we are experiencing, and it doesn't necessarily have to be your own ignorance per se, but our ignorance, you could say, our collective ignorance, right? And we participate in the collective ignorance in some way or another. That is why there is climate, there is suffering in terms of climate. That is why there is suffering in terms of political situations here and there. That is why there is economic suffering. That is why there is social suffering. That is why there is physical suffering. That is why there is the mental, psychological, all these kinds of suffering. So it's not just some philosophy to decorate bookshelves. Okay, it is talking about the very suffering, whatever suffering that you're experiencing. Like I said last time, and I remember just an example. It's not that I need my rent to be paid or anything like that. But if that is something that I'm worried about, and something that is causing me some sort of pain, some sort of ignorance is connected to it somehow. Okay, and you can even say, okay, it's not necessarily because I don't understand the true nature of the ultimate nature of reality. That's why I cannot pay my rent. Okay, we may not accept that, but it is connected. But there are these different levels of ignorance. So there's something that I misunderstood that I'm acting upon that eventually ended up where now I can't pay my rent. Right? That we can accept. Right? You go to a doctor, the doctor doesn't understand your situation, and the doctor misunderstands your situation, and it makes a prescribe something based on their wrong understanding, what do you end up with? You end up with further suffering. So at all these different levels of ignorance, whatever level we are experiencing it, the only result that it produces is some kind of suffering. Okay, so don't think of it as some sort of deep philosophy, some sort of abstract thing. Okay, everything that is happening in your life right here, right now, that is some kind of suffering is connected to some level, some measure, some dimension of ignorance. And that's where we want to arrive at. And once we arrive at this as a conviction that ignorance in some dimension, in some form or another, is responsible for my suffering, my mother's suffering, my father's suffering, my sister's suffering, everyone who I know who have encountered who's having some kind of suffering, whether it's their suffering that they're experiencing on their own or some kind of suffering that we're sharing, ignorance is somewhere to be blamed. So ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance produces suffering. Okay? Just not knowing something isn't just some passive thing, because we will act on this not knowing. Okay. So that's the reverse and the forward, what they call about the reverse and the forward. And one thing that we need to understand about how these 12 are included in each one. In each one of these links, the other 12 are included. Okay, that's why you can't really ultimately pinpoint to what exactly is ignorance. You cannot ultimately pinpoint to what is consciousness, to what is potential. Okay, and when you start to see how they are intricately connected, that you can't really just separate one out. You cannot just be in birth completely separated from the other things. Ignorance is in that birth. There's a consciousness in that birth. There's a body, there's a form, there's a potential for body and form in that birth. There's and all the other things connected to it. There's change taking place in that birth. There's dying taking place at every moment. There's birth taking place at every moment. Because you might say there are micro 12 links taking place within this sort of macro 12 links. And the macro 12 links, it is said to take like 3 lifetimes. The ignorance of the past projects the potential that is nurtured or activated by grasping and craving that creates the life, the present life, and the present life creates potential within this life for the next lives. So you can say there are 3 lives, and it doesn't have to be exactly the previous life. It doesn't have to be exactly the life that's ahead, but in some sort of these 3 times, you can say that. Okay. You could say the ignorance of the past projected this life that we have right now, and the potential that we create with the ignorance that we have now will create a kind of a suffering life in the future, okay, after this life. So these are 3 ways that to see that. And the reason for seeing these 3 lifetimes is that once death stops, when death has arrived, it doesn't mean that the 12 links have come to an end. It means another round of the 12 links begin to perpetuating. Then this is supposed to scare the daylights out of you. If you don't do something about ignorance right here, right now, don't think that once this life is over, everything is over. You will not remember who created it. You will not remember the name of the person that you were in the past, so you can curse that person for having created this life. But you will have a life where you will be drowned in, I don't know where this is coming from, but yet I'm suffering from it. Okay. And they will perpetuate. And the thing to keep pointing your finger at and to have even righteous rage against is ignorance. And in all the ways that you can deal with ignorance. Like, oh, I don't know how to take care of my finances. That's a kind of ignorance that if you don't know it, it will create some kind of financial suffering. Okay. So ignorance about finances, if you're experiencing financial suffering, you must see how, if indeed you're experiencing financial suffering and it's something that you don't want to experience, then you have to say, I need to get rid of this ignorance that I have about finances. Okay. So it's not, don't blow it, don't throw it into some sort of universe that you can abstract about and not make it dealing with exactly what is going on right here, right now in your life. Okay. And eventually you will get to that kind of big ignorance, the existential kind of ignorance. And then in the same way that we have a palpable sense, my ignorance of finances is responsible for my financial suffering. And when you see the financial suffering as suffering, you will want to do something about that ignorance, and you will do something about that ignorance. Okay, my ignorance about my health is creating suffering about health suffering. And if you are witnessing the health suffering and you want to do something about it, you want to know something, you want to remove that ignorance so that you can come to a knowing, so you can engage in whatever you need to engage in, the understanding that will manipulate reality, that will affect reality so that you can have some kind of health. So ignorance is not just some abstract. When the 12 links are presented, of course, in the sutra, they are presented because there's such a focus on, see, that's why you messed up. See, that's why you messed up. See, that's why you messed up. So you hear you're messed up so often that you might begin to develop depression, to develop depression. Okay. But the 12 links is actually great news, wonderful news. See, what it is pointing to is that there's a way out. Whatever condition that you find yourself in that you don't want to be in, the 12 link is telling you there's a way out. And there is a sutra where also called dependent origination, but it's not, but it's rather transcendent dependent origination, transcendental dependent origination. And rather than sort of looking at how did this suffering begin, say, you get the root of ignorance, but rather you look at the suffering that is taking place and you look at it. You accept it. It is there. It is present. And when you begin to look at it, then one of the appearances in the experience of the suffering, which is the suffering seems concrete in the sense that there's nothing you can do about it. It is fixed. You're stuck with it. And that is why we develop anxiety. That is why we develop depression, because it is the mind reacting towards it, believing it to be, there's nothing you can do about it, right? So when you look at the suffering, all the different dimensions of it, and you have to be brave to look at it. There are times it's just unbearable to look at suffering, whatever the suffering may be. But you develop strength, you develop stamina to be able to take a look at it. And as you look at it, you begin to see it is not as solid as it appeared before. You begin to see, there's the wheel that turns to make this experience happen. There's the button that is pressed to make that happen. You begin to see those different parts of it, the different functions of it. You begin to see the dynamic, the mechanism of it. You begin to see what are the things that are connected to it that is nourishing it, that is making it happen, that is making it perpetuate. And when you witness that suffering and you begin to see what are the links connected to it, and that is the reason why One of the things that we do in vipassana is you just stay with whatever experience that is present. And it's the kind of meditation that we were doing earlier, where you're just present with whatever is appearing. Because connected to that is hope. But we have to stay with it. So eventually, staying with suffering, seeing the possibilities that are, seeing that, this suffering is conditioned. That's what we're beginning to see. It is conditioned. And when we see that it is conditioned, that itself will help us to develop faith. Faith, a strong conviction, even though it's the kind of faith that is somewhat connected to all kinds of religion, in the sense that the way sort of in the West faith is defined, somewhat connected to that. It's the conviction in things that we're not yet seeing, okay? But this conviction in the possibility of the end of suffering is not based on nothing, okay? It's not just some haphazard miracle that happens in your mind that you either have or don't have, but rather you begin to gain conviction that the suffering that I have is conditioned. And that is an immense realization to have when you see what the experience that you're having is conditioned. Immediately following that, there will arise the faith that I can do. There's something that I can do. I may not know what to do yet, but there's something that I can do, and that will develop faith. And this faith will free the mind from the imprisonment that kept it in believing that there's nothing you can do. Now, that kind of conviction, there's nothing I can do, begin to be freed from your mind. And because that is being freed, it creates space in the mind. And that space that is created, we experience it as some kind of a joy. And we need this space so that our mind is not so obsessed with the suffering as though that's the only thing that exists in reality, as though reality has nothing else to offer other than this suffering that we are experiencing. And that's what happens, right? When we are in the midst of suffering. And in that midst of that suffering, it seems like there's nothing else that exists. The only thing that exists is the suffering. The moment before doesn't seem to exist. And it doesn't seem like the suffering will ever end. And we are trapped with that conviction that it doesn't seem like it's going to end. And we are in that moment, we are perpetuating the ignorance, the misunderstanding about the condition, which again creates potential, which will create further suffering, right? In that moment of the experience and the suffering, we acknowledge that is happening also, but we leave it open to what else is going on in this very suffering. Then we begin to see directly, this experience is conditioned. And that creates the faith. And the faith itself makes the space for inviting other possibilities, inviting that which we actually need to be able to get out of this suffering. So by diving deep into the suffering, we create the space to actually free ourselves from the suffering. Running away from the suffering, which is the tendency, which is more like the natural tendency that we experience. When we're having suffering, the definition of suffering, that which we don't want to experience. And by definition, we want to and the way we know not to experience it is to run away from it. And there are many ways we run away from it. There are many ways we distract ourselves from it, okay? And not staying with it, not knowing, yes, there is this pain. It is this way. It is this heavy. It is this, my heart feels this way. My energy feels this way. These are the different dimensions of it. And by knowing it, this is suffering. See, we are gaining wisdom. we are undermining the ignorance that tells us that this is going to last forever, you're stuck. Okay, we're undermining that ignorance by knowing the suffering as it is taking place. And by knowing it, we begin to see, oh, it is conditioned. And faith arises, faith that it is possible. I don't know yet, but it is possible that I don't have to suffer like this anymore. I don't know when, but the concreteness, the impermanence, the permanence of this, the illusion of the impermanence is gone. I'm free of that. And that creates the space. And that space is joy. Just like you have in the 12 links of that gets to suffering, you have grasping, right? Grasping and what are they called? Craving and grasping, right? Initial desire and strong desire. So this, you could say this create initial enjoyment, an initial ecstasy. And this initial ecstasy, just like the initial desire, when it is nurtured, it creates a strong desire that will definitely bring about some sort of experience. So this creates a stronger kind of ecstatic experience. And just because we don't have a word for it, we just, what is higher than joy, whatever word you want to use, glad, okay, rapture, whatever suits your fancy, okay? So you have an initial great feeling, good feeling, and a big, strong feeling. That means there's that little space you created and you're able to go into it, and it opens that space even more. Now there's even more possibility of being free from that suffering. Your mind is now more open to the possibility of getting out of the suffering. And this more openness, we experience that as a greater ecstatic experience. Call it rapture, okay? And because the mind is no longer, oh my God, the suffering, oh my God, the suffering, am I gonna do it? Oh my God, the suffering, which is really just distracting ourselves from it, not really looking at it. And we become so obsessed that, okay, that's it, there's no more, from this moment forward, there's nothing else but suffering for me. So we break away from that delusion. Now the mind is free. The mind is no longer running or trying to run away from the suffering, right? Caught up in trying to run away from the suffering. When the mind is caught up in trying to run away from the suffering, is looking for distraction. What can distract me from this? What can distract me from action? And the mind cannot focus. Now that you have joy, you have rapture, now you're able to focus. But right before you're able to focus, your mind achieves what is referred to as a kind of tranquility. So it's really more space, more of that pleasure, more of that pleasantness that is taking place. And that pleasure, now your mind is no longer, it sees the suffering, but it's not buying that the suffering is there forever. It's not buying that you're stuck with the suffering. Now your mind is able to really focus. It's not running around trying to run away from the suffering anymore. Now it's focused. Now you're able to reach focus. And now that you reach focus, simultaneous with reaching focus, there's even a greater kind of pleasure that the mind, more space in the mind. Now the suffering becomes just a little thing, a little something in the mind. It's not, it doesn't seem to have the effect of being completely overcrowding the mind anymore. It's just a little speck. It's in the mind. It doesn't have the existential threat that it was posing before. Now that it has just a tiny speck in the mind, now the mind is free. Now you're able to focus, and the mind is, and this capacity, this spaciousness for the mind to focus is experienced as this great, great joy. And now that your mind is spacious, now you can see truth. And being able to see truth will allow us to become, will help us. What is it that we will see? We will see how is it that we created this suffering, or what is the thing that is connected to the suffering? And we can literally, almost, you could say, kick that suffering out. And how do you kick it out? by bringing understanding, by bringing an understanding of reality that is more in alignment with the way reality actually is. And when we have that, that undermines the ignorance, and the ignorance loses power. It loses, you could say, it occupies less real, less, what's that word they use in real estate? Less real estate. It occupies less real estate in your mind. Because it occupies less real estate in your mind, it doesn't have the power, as much power as it has before, to continue to produce the kind of the existence of life of suffering. Now you have truth, a measure of truth with you. Remember, an understanding of reality has the potential to create experience. It doesn't matter if it's a misunderstanding or correct understanding. But now we have a correct understanding, and this correct understanding will create a potential. But instead of creating a potential where we end up with suffering, we'll create a potential where we end up with liberation. Okay. So, and all this is starting with being brave enough to look at your suffering, not being afraid of it, because it's there. It tells you, I'm here forever. It convinces us, and then we are trying to run away from it while it holds us holds us at the tail, and we're trying to run away from it. But rather, we turn around and face it and look at it. And when we look at it directly, we begin to see the illusion that it was creating all this time. It doesn't have all the power that it was saying that it had before. And when we begin to see that, then our process of liberation begins with faith, with joy, with focus, and eventually with the mind clear, and we're able to see reality without misunderstanding anymore. And that will eventually lead to liberation. So that's the transcendent dependent origination. Okay. And we do have time to talk about a more subtle, a more refined way of looking at dependent origination. Okay. We look at this body. This is that we have. We have this body and we have this mind. This evident body, this evident mind, having its evident experiences that are denied. And within this body itself, and just like within the suffering itself, is the key to liberation, by being mindful, by presenting a sense of presence to suffering, by presenting a sense of presence to what is exactly here that we call in the body. What is exactly here that we call in the body? And just let the body present itself to you. You don't have to go to some third party to know what is here. What is here? What are you feeling? What is it? What is there? I'm not talking about doing what you call that thing in medical school. What you do to the they bring a corpse to class, and then you autopsy, yeah, okay, you don't have to do autopsy on your on your body to see what's there. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, just in case someone didn't hear before, I'm saying it right here. I'm not saying do autopsy on yourself to know what's there. Okay, as a matter of fact, with the light of your consciousness in deep meditation, you can see flesh, you can see bones, you can see all these things with just the mind of making your mind clearer and clearer and clearer, where the veil that prevents it from seeing, the veil of skin, the veil of flesh, okay, you can actually begin to see those things. And eventually you will begin but it's not that it's in that particular order, first skin, then flesh, and then, but no. Actually, it's more in the reverse. you begin to see the subtle, begin to sense the subtle aspects. And then from the subtle aspects, and you see the more grosser and the grosser until you arrive at skin, flesh, and blood. That's actually how it happens. So the first thing that you will have a sense of by just focusing on the physical body as it is, that's your suffering, right? That's the point of suffering. That's the point of beginning. And when you begin with that, just stay with it. This is what I have. Then you will begin a subtle journey where eventually you will start to feel what you might sense the energy aspect of the body. Okay. And at times it will be just like one blob of energy. And at other times it will seem to be very, very defined with specific dimensions, with specific geometric patterns and things like that. It comes and goes. So that is somewhat telling you, and you directly perceive how this energy body has a correlation or relationship with this physical body, the body of flesh and bone, right? And then you begin to see denser aspects. So you begin with the subtle energy, start to feel, and it becomes very clear to you. And then you begin to see a more like an in-between sort of body, a body that is in between what's called pure energy and a body that is between the body of flesh. Okay. And all that is to simply being with what is, simply being with what is. And eventually, what we will arrive at, I'm gonna just jump. Okay, I'm gonna jump. So within the Vajrayana, death, it's not that the Vajrayana dismisses the presentation of ignorance and so on and so forth. It's like it's given. Okay, it's a given. This body, this kind of body that I have, this kind of mind that I have, this kind of emotions that I have, this kind of way of relating with the world, the limits of my senses, all these are connected to ignorance. Okay, that's a given. Okay, but what else is there? Eventually there will be death. And remember that these things are interlaced. It's not like there are ultimate, like this is the only moment of death. This is the only moment of birth. This is the only, like these things are happening at every moment. Ignorance, potential, consciousness, and body, mind, potential, six senses and contact and the rest, and birth. Okay. So there are birth taking place every moment. There's death taking place at every moment. Okay. And also there are greater moments of death taking place. Not the big death, but there are greater moments of death. Like, for example, each time you go to sleep, it's a kind of a death, right? So in the Vajrayana, when we look at death, we want to know, okay, what are the conditions, what are the things that precedes this experience that we call the experience of death? Yes, because of birth, we have death, but in the process of death itself, in the experience of death itself, what precedes it? Okay. And then but you don't begin with death and then and go to birth, but rather you begin with what is here and now, and okay, let me, okay, these are the four elements that make up the body, right? Four elements mean that my body is, there are states of solidity, there are states of fluidity, there are states of warmth, there are states of movement. These are states, right? And that basically, you could say essentially that's what's operating as body, right? Now, if you were to somehow, and at the level of experience, at the level of consciousness, withdraw these elements, what happens as you withdraw these elements? And what is the end result of experience of consciousness when you withdraw these elements. And eventually, finally, I'm not going to give all the stages in between, sorry. But I'll give you some big, nice picture at the end, okay? So eventually, upon the final withdrawal of all the things that sustains consciousness in body experience, at the end of it, there is death. So death, as far as you could say the Vajrayana path is concerned, it's not that in non-Vajrayana, they say, oh, sorry, that's not true. It cannot be denied, but it's not focused. But in the Vajrayana, that's the focus, okay? So death is the withdrawal of all the elements necessary for experience that we call life experience, okay? So what are the sort of like right before the experience that we call death, what is the withdrawal that takes place there? Okay. Okay, I'll mention these and they may go over your head. That's good. So death in the Vajrayana is the experience that we call it is with consciousness withdrawing into its most subtle aspect. Okay, just like we have ignorance creates potential, creates a kind of a consciousness or kind of container for awareness. There is this very subtle consciousness that has within it potential to create a kind of life, a kind of experience of life. So prior to this potential being activated by whatever, right? When it's at this level, prior to being activating any kind of potential for any kind of life, that subtle consciousness, referred to as clear light, is a blissful awareness, a vast, unlimited, timeless, spaceless experience of awareness, of consciousness that is blissful. Okay, so that's the good news. So kind of that, and this always, whether it is a tantric death or a non-tantric death, this always happened. What makes it tantric is that there's awareness of it. There is awareness of it. You bring awareness to this experience. And when you bring awareness to this experience, prior to this being being acted upon by circumstances of ignorance to activate the potential for the kind of life that's suffering, before that, you infuse that rather with wisdom. So when this potential is infused by factors connected to misunderstanding reality by ignorance, it creates this blissful, vast, limitless, spaceless experience into limitation of what we call a suffering existence. But when we introduce instead a correct understanding of reality, wisdom instead, instead of that, potential creates liberation instead. Okay, so the news that understanding of reality creates an experience of reality is good news. The fact that we are suffering, even though we do not want suffering, means we have the power to make ourselves have an experience and yet be subject to that experience. The fact that suffering cannot go away just by wanting it to go away is proof of our power to create lasting experiences. Okay? So when you are suffering and you witness it and you are wanting it at that moment to go away and it's not going away, you have to say, wow, look how powerful I am. I have an experience and the experience is enduring. That means I have the power to create experiences that are enduring. Right now, the experience that I've created is suffering. And because I have used all the necessary conditions for it to come into an appearance of reality, it will endure for whatever period of time that it will endure. Okay? And since I am connected to the past, to the means, to this mechanism of creating experiences, and since this is an experience I do not want, how did I create this experience? Let me not go into that process again, but rather let me, since I'm going to have an experience no matter what, we are going to have an experience of it. We are going to experience existence in some form, some way or another. It's either we experience existence as suffering, being lazy about understanding what is actually happening in our lives. But when we have the courage to really understand what is going on in our lives, that's beginning to develop wisdom. Like the first wisdom is, I have no idea what's going on. That's wisdom. When it is sincere, when you're not just saying it so others could think that you're humble, okay? But you sincerely notice, I don't know what's going on, and you acknowledge it, and it's real, it is true, that's wisdom. And you allow what is true to continue to appeal to you. Then instead of engaging reality with a misunderstanding, we will engage reality with a proper understanding. And this will definitely create, it will have an impact on this timeless, spaceless, blissful state, which is a potential for a kind of knowing the world or knowing reality, and a potential for a kind of reality to know. Let me say that again. What the potential is, the potential for to know reality a certain way, and then a reality to know. So just as a side, in a way you could say that the mind-only school was somewhat right, but not entirely right. But if that is confusing, forget it. Okay. So within that timeless, spaceless, it's not mind, okay? Timeless, spaceless, blissful awareness is the potential to know and the potential for the things, for that knowing to know. Okay? And when you are able to know this, and that's what the Vajrayana path helps us. It helps us to arrive at knowing this. When there's a knowing of this, then Lalita can exist. Then there is conscious participation in the play of existence can take place, where we can have a knowing that knows atoms, that sees them or doesn't see them, that knows the vastness of the cosmos, that knows hearts, that knows emotions. And then the actual objects that are known, okay? And this kind of understanding is related to this kind of understanding is related to somewhat to what modern evolutionary biologists are saying, that through evolution, evolution conditions the entity in such a way that it sees the world according to what is fit for it. Okay? So just because we see the world in a certain way, we see colors, it doesn't mean that every entity either sees those colors, don't see those colors. They may have been completely conditioned by evolution to have a different world to interact with. Okay? And this is not to say that ultimately we live in a bubble. Okay? Whenever you are observing reality and you come to an aspect of reality and there is a tendency to make it an ultimate, know that you're going the wrong direction. Okay? Yes, we condition both the mind that perceives and the object that the mind perceives. And this is a lie, I'm going to tell you right here, right now, but it somewhat points to the illustration. Maybe I shouldn't say it, but I'm telling you from the very beginning, it's a lie. The lie is when Christopher Columbus was arriving with the 3 ships on the horizon, the natives didn't see anything because they had no idea what it was. So they saw nothing until Christopher Columbus stepped on the shore. Whoa, where did you come from? That's a lie. Okay. But it's somewhat pointing to this thing about your condition creates the kind of object you're able to see, you could say, because of the kind of sense power your condition has created. Okay, with that kind of understanding. Of course, the natives saw something. They had no idea what it was, maybe because they never saw it before, but they saw something. I had this friend of mine who was a doctor, orthopedic doctor, surgeon, and he absolutely believed that if you never saw it before, you would not even see it. And he presented me with something. He said, "What is this?" He said, "I have no idea what you're holding. It's a piece of plastic." See it? See what I mean? This is a ta-da-ta-da-ta-da-ta-da that orthopedic surgeons use. I said, "Yeah, I had no idea what it was, but if you throw it at me, I will dodge. I will not let it hit me. I have no idea what it is, but I'm seeing it." Okay, so in that kind of way, all right. And also at the level of, for example, a butterfly sees things and reacts towards it that we don't even see. A dog hears something that it reacts to that we don't even hear. Yes, there is that level. There's that level. Okay, because of the conditions that we are in, the conditions. Okay. This was a slight digress. Okay, so this is the great thing that is possible, that great yogis have demonstrated with the teaching that I've just given you. At death, there is somewhat of withdrawal, or you could say an actual withdrawal of the four elements, but it's not a complete total withdrawal of the elements, but rather the consciousness that empowers or that abides in those elements is definitely withdrawn. But the elements themselves are not entirely withdrawn, but some aspect of them, some aspect of the gross elements are withdrawn. That's for ordinary death, ordinary people, okay? But yogis are able, because they understand how the dependent link of what we are calling an appearance in reality, let's call it that way. I'm not even call it a life, a human being life, but an appearance and reality. At the root of it is clear light. And it is absolutely clear light that is producing, responsible for even the flesh and blood that we have. So at every death, we take back a little bit, enough of the elements to act as potential to create. It's like, you have two cells coming together, and then boom, they have a whole human body with trillions of cells, right? Two cells, because they have within them the potential to create billions of cells. So in the same way, the clear light takes with it the potential, a little bit of the elements, so that it can recreate them again into a whole new body. It doesn't need the entire thing, you could say, okay? But yogis are able to take the entire kit and caboodle, kit and kabugo, kit and bugubo. Oh my God. The entire kit and bugibo, kit and Poughkeepsie. You know what I mean? There are yogis who are able to take all of it, that is, withdraw all of it into the clear light. And when they do that, that's what they call achieving rainbow body. That they have withdrawn every single aspect that has been manifested by the clear light back into clear light, leaving nothing behind. And there are degrees of withdrawal, just like everybody has degrees of withdrawal. There's the ordinary, everybody, you take a tiny little bit, just enough, one cell, and the cell has the blueprint. It will create billions more. And there are some who are able to withdraw enough where the body shrinks, but the body's still there. And there are those who withdraw enough that the body, most of the body disappears except the nails and hair remain. And there are those who are able to withdraw even that back into pure consciousness, back into pure clear light. Okay, so the dependent origination, which is great news, that in death, if you allow consciousness, just like in suffering, if you allow yourself to be mindful, there is hope for liberation. In death, if we allow ourselves to know, especially the little death that takes place, like every time we fall asleep, allow ourselves to be aware of that death. The knowledge of it, the non-ignorance of it will grant us the opportunity to put an end to the wheel in a very drastic way, where we arrive at the point where right before ignorance can have an effect, but we infuse it rather with wisdom, and we end up with enlightenment. So that's how in Vajrayana, they see the 12 links of dependent origination. You say, oh, thank goodness. Thank you for that. Okay. Tantrikas are crazy people. Okay. If you're not crazy, you can't be a Tantrika. You got to look at death and say, oh, what a great opportunity. Give it to me. Oh, suffering, bring it over here. Let me have a little talk with it. Okay. Whatever is given the grace of existing is presenting us with something very sacred. Whatever it is that exists, we are in the presence of the sacred. The sacred is there. It is the sacred that is allowing it to have existence. It is the sacred that issues forth different kinds of experiences. So whatever you're experiencing, it's an opportunity to return to grace. It's an opportunity for us to return to clear light. Okay? That's why the 12 links pointing to suffering is great news for the Tantrika, because suffering exists. Because it exists, it's an opportunity to connect with the source of that, which give birth to it. All right. I believe we covered everything. And I didn't quite go into the, I didn't quite go into the vipassana, but you get the idea. Okay. All right. Like right now, for example, the way I am pointing to, see, it's because of ignorance. If it wasn't for ignorance, there wouldn't be this problem. As you all know, I was born in Haiti. Even though I came here when I was very young, but I'm still connected. I'm no longer a citizen of Haiti because they don't allow dual citizenship. But I still have a sense of connection to that place. And what's been going on for the past 2 years has been very saddening. And then today, and a very great tragedy happened. In this day of age, a president an elected president is assassinated. I mean, what kind of stupidity is this, right? So, and instead of going into, okay, give me the names, it's not that that's irrelevant, right? But rather, if understanding that ignorance is at the root of this, then we can really do something about it. But if we don't see ignorance as the root of this, it's just going to continue. It will just continue. The next president will be assassinated. The other one would be whatever the economy, the environment. There will always be suffering connected to those things because of ignorance. And whatever the level of ignorance, I'm not talking about they need to be Buddhist and understand the truth and understand emptiness. Okay? Ignorance has led to this. And ignorance is not some passive thing. That's what the 12 links of dependent origination is alarming us about. Okay? Ignorance is not some passive thing. It creates experiences. Okay? And the kind of experiences that it creates are the suffering experiences that we don't want to experience. So we have to be vigilant in all levels to kick out ignorance. Okay, that's my thing. So do we have any time to ask questions?
Well, I've actually got one.
You got one. Okay, there's a question.
I'm driving, so I'm not on video this time. Well, maybe not a question so much, but I something that really occurred to me was like, wow, I'm actually really curious about the nature of ignorance now.
Good.
Yeah. You do Buddhism, you look at the nature of reality, but it's like, oh, I feel like I really need to get a better sense of what's the nature of well, I mean, it seems personal, like what's the nature of my ignorance. And this I feel like there's these moments where I actively ignore a certain aspect of my reality, like a certain truth of it. You were talking about death, and I was thinking like there's that usual kind of apologia for death. It's like the circle of life, this interconnectedness, and like the body serves the next thing. And I mean, it's hard for that to be like the one thing to sort of like, oh yeah, I'm totally cool with grandma dying. It doesn't make it for me quite there.
Yeah.
But there is something in like those experiences where like I'm ignoring the causality of it. Like I'm ignoring like how I contributed to my experience, or I'm ignoring like there's I think there's this experience is odious and nothing but I'm cutting off how it's connected to some other aspect. And so yeah, I think that was like that was the big takeaway. It's just like I really wanting to get a better sense of
yeah
where I'm choosing to not let in the full experience of reality.
Yeah. Yeah. In the Mahamudra teachings, the Mahamudra form of teachings, the perspective that they take is that ignorance is fabricated. Wisdom is not fabricated. Wisdom is the unfabricated. So since wisdom is unfabricated, there's no need. The way of arriving at wisdom is to look at the fabricated. That is, the way to arrive at wisdom is to know ignorance. Because ignorance is saying, I am the truth. And it's a lie. And in order for us to know that it is a lie, we have to look at it. And only by looking at it can we say, it is a lie. And we arrive at a kind of knowing. And this knowing is wisdom. And I guess he had bad reception, bad connection over there. Yes, we have to understand causality and all that kind of stuff. And then I see a lot of Buddhists and non-Buddhists get caught up in that, trying to know, somehow they believe that I need to know the exact cause of this thing so I can have so I can move forward. Okay, that's nice to have that determination, but the thing to acknowledge also is I don't know. I don't know what the cause of this is. Until we admit that, we won't move forward to get to know the cause. Okay. And you see a lot of Buddhists wasting time looking, okay, what is the cause for this? What is the cause for this? What is the cause for this? Like some direct cause. Like if I recite Ta's mantra 1,270,077 times, will that be the cause for me to, I don't know, pay my rent? And they're looking for someone to tell them that. Okay. That kind of looking, it's ignorance driving us. And we think looking for Tara, looking for that kind of that's wisdom. But rather noticing, I can't pay my rent. And I don't like the situation. Knowing that, being honest with that, that's developing wisdom. And this kind of what Emmett was mentioning about, my body is just returning to the earth, and then the earth is going to be nourishing a plant, the trees. Is that a truth for you, or is that you bypassing death, pretending to be okay with it when you're not really okay with it? Okay, this is what you might call, I guess, some form of spiritual bypassing. Okay, then why are you clinging to your life if it's just going to be a wonderful offering to the earth, to the soil? That's all that death is. Okay. All right. We reached the top of the hour. Thank you very much for making it out tonight, even though it was last minute notice. Thank you. So let's do a closing meditation, our closing meditation. Okay, it was still the same. As you are looking for the posture that's going to make you comfortable, you bring into conscious awareness the last time you were meditating, and try to remember how your body felt, how you felt energetically, how you felt in the mind, that the vividness of that recollection will begin to infuse your present state, sort of aligning the present body with the sense of how the body felt, and you begin to feel it in the body. And as you begin to have the slightest experience of it in the body, rejoice. The slightest experience of it energetically, rejoice. The slightest of experience of it in the breath, in the behavior of the breath, rejoice. Even a fraction of a moment of experiencing it in the mind, rejoice. And continue to bring attention to the signs in the body, in the breath, in the mind, in the body, in the breath, in the mind, in the mind, in the breath, in the body. That way you encourage yourself. You're witnessing that you are indeed beginning to experience the state of meditation, knowing that you are indeed right here, right now, accessing and abiding in ever subtle, more powerful levels of consciousness. A sense of withdrawing is already taking place. That's why you feel a sense of the weight of the body. Then, once you feel somewhat reconnected, stabilize this connection with a nice deep breath in through the nose, out the mouth. And as you breathe out, just let yourself go into that calm, let yourself go into that pleasantness that's in the body, in the breath, in the mind. Let yourself go into the sound, vision, let them happen. Let yourself go into them. That's clarity, radiance, and focus. And while in there, bring a palpable sense of me, which is a composite of different points, different parts that we call us, me. Legs, left leg, right hand, left hand, torso, head, neck, eyes. All these are different parts, different from each other. And yet we call it me, us. If the right hand needs help, the left hand doesn't say, well, it's not me, should I help you? The right hand immediately say, I am in need, and goes to the left. So stay with that sense of us, of me, of being a whole composite of many, many parts. And there's the tendency, the wish to be of service to any part, and it's me. Now see us here, gathered together in a circle. And have the same way that you have all the different parts making the whole one you, us. Now see all the different personalities, different bodies, and cultivate the sense of this is us. And to help you have that sense, think of someone looking at us sitting in a circle saying, look at them, as who's pointing to one thing, and feel that one thing, which is us. And as we feel it in the very center of our gathering, our sense of us is manifesting as a bright presence in the center of our gathering. The presence of that light strengthens the sense of us. In the same way, my right hand is ready to help the left hand, and that's me helping me. In the same way, we feel we are ready to help anyone here, and that's helping me, helping us. And as that strengthens, the light in the center begins to glow brighter and brighter and expand. And there's a ray of light connecting our heart to the very center of that presence. We are strengthening the us, and the us is strengthening us. And it expands, it expands, getting brighter and brighter. And as it expands and getting brighter, whatever that it touches becomes part of us. The pets in your home continues to expand. Your neighbors, Your entire neighborhood continues to expand, continues to expand. The entire, everyone in the country, the mountains, the skies, the clouds, the trees, the grass, the rivers, continues to expand until we feel it has taken into itself the entire earth. And everyone is us. The mountain is us. The rivers are us. The oceans are us. The birds, the fish, our neighbors, the liberals, the Republicans, the Democrats, they're all us. And we strengthen that sense of readiness to go help the ocean, to go help the fish, to go help the sky, to go help the mountain, to go help the grass, like the right hand going to help the left, to go help our neighbor. And if you wish to expand this even further, as long as it feels real to you, expand it as far as you can wish. And have that sense of us, us, us. And there's a certain joy you feel when you feel you care for another. And there's a joy you feel when you feel ready to help another. That joy is the space for the wisdom and the knowledge you need. Then after some time, that big sphere of light begins to shrink again. And as it shrinks, it leaves behind what it absorbed. And there's a sheen, a light left on all those things that it's leaving behind, until it goes back to being a ball of presence, a ball of light, luminous presence in the center of our circle. And we are sort of coated with the light of us. And through that ray of light connecting that center and us, that bright presence now separates equally into those rays of light and fully absorbs into our hearts, fills our minds. And in this very body, we feel, by taking care of me, I take care of us. In taking care of us, I take care of me. Whatever understanding, whatever gifts you may have received through tonight's, give thanks. And through that merit, wish to dedicate it to whatever concerns you may have, whether it's personal, whether it's for a community somewhere, or for a particular person. Make that dedication. Gyewa di Kyokan Sunam Yeshe Tokzokshin Sunam Yeshe Lechung Dhamma Gunye Tobar Sho. And get ready to come out of the meditation. Take a nice deep breath that you feel in here. And deliberately, consciously reconnect with your immediate surroundings through the sense of touch. Be aware of the point of contact between you and your seat, and the floor, and the air and the temperature around you. Be aware of the different sounds, the sounds that are close, the sounds that are far. And slowly let your eyes take in light, noticing deliberately colors, shapes, shadows, lights. Okay, thank you.
So we're still putting together notes and references for this topic. So if you'd like to receive a copy and you haven't submitted your email yet, you can drop it in the chat. I think I already have some of you on the list, like Cheryl. Very pleasant little death tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Beautiful teaching.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was really great.
Well, you're